Looking at these contour lines, you can see these lines, if they're close together, it means it's quite steep. If they're far apart, it means it's not. But you can see from here, they effectively follow a ridge line. There's little bits of dips and troughs there, but realistically, it all follows the top of the ridge until it gets to this point where these lines get pretty interesting. There's a quick and easy way to be able to see it, and all it does is you create a route, and I'm gonna switch that over to adventure riding. Straight away with Gaia gives us this option, and we can see here that we're going to have some part of it that's going to be pretty challenging, right? This bit here and coming back out of it the other side. These yellow bits tell us it's going to be a little bit there, but the orange bits tell us that that's probably going to be a bit full on. Now, this is quite neat, and this is in fact just come out. They've just released this new planning tool, which is really pretty awesome, and it actually gives me the gradient of -15%, and over this side we've got up to 22% climb, which is pretty significant. All right, so what do these numbers mean? Well, there are 3 ways we can represent this as numbers. Angle of elevation from horizontal, so what's our degrees of change? What is the percentage of deviation from horizontal? Or more simply, in a ratio of rise to run. All right, so when I first approached this, I thought that looked like 40 degrees, maybe even 45 degrees, really high. In actual fact, what it is that it's 2 meters rise and 10 meters run. Now, measure that with the GPS, so it's only so accurate, but it gives us some pretty rough numbers to work with. Now, so just doing some rough calculations, 10 divided by 20 is a 5-to-1 ratio, which works out to 20%, which is a 11.31 degrees. So that's only 11 degrees, 12 degrees. Okay, so we're going to go from 670. So we've got 650, 660, 670. So from 670 down to the bottom of this hill is 610 is at this line, and then it sort of flattens out here. And looking at our relative distance here, we're probably looking at roughly, maybe not quite 200 meters. Let's go with 200 meters anyway, just to kind of round it out. Therefore, 200 meters divided by 60 is 3.3 to 1. And now that is pretty damn steep. So we know just by doing a quick calculation that that's going to be a fairly steep drop. Now, another way, if you're not using Gaia tools and you want to use something else, there is another way to do this. Because interestingly, I was going to show you this other way, but then of course, just as I'm recording this video, I'm finding that Gaia has now added this new feature, which is kind of does the same thing. So it makes it kind of redundant. However, if you're not using Gaia, then you can also use Google Earth. Export it as a KML file. All right, so we've got our KML file, open it up in Google Earth, and that gives us a representation here. The cool thing about this is you can go down and have a bit of a look to see what it actually looks like in reality. And when I say reality, that it's not actual reality, it is just a graphical representation. I'll get into that in a second, why that's not always the most accurate thing. And we can see it's a pretty steep incline from there. That looks pretty interesting. Now, the other cool thing, now Brent Pearson showed me this one, so shout out to him. You can then right click on it and go show elevation profile. And that then gives you a profile here that shows you where the nastiness is. Now, from there, this little arrow tells us where we are, so we can zoom in and have a bit of a look at it. But this is what we're looking at here. So up here, we've got some stats, maximum slope, 30%, 24, minus 24%, right? So that's pretty insane. So it's saying here on this climb bit is up to 30% incline, which is pretty insane. 30% then is obviously 3.3 to 1 ratio. So it's even steeper than a 4 to 1 ratio, which is, had me worried. All right. But also that gives us a bit of an idea of what's there around the rest of it, and the rest of it looks pretty good. Now, it's worth pointing out here that they're giving us slightly different numbers. So it's a minus 18% seems to be the steepest on that decline. And then for the incline on the other side, it's got 22% as the highest. And this is the thing, right? There is no absolute when it comes to this. There's no perfect number. One's not going to give you the perfect number over the other. The whole idea is to give you a rough idea. You know, is this something we can achieve or not? Now, another thing to bear in mind, let's have a look at what that looks like in reality as far as the data goes. Thing that is interesting is this bit here. Now, what we found on the day, I was looking at this going, oh, this is going to be steep. That actually wasn't the steep bit. It was this last little bit down to the river. Now, looking at this map, it doesn't tell us that at all. It actually says it's kind of flat. And so did Gaia Maps as well, by the way. When we drop down into here, this looks completely flat. Now, in reality, that was actually the bit where we dropped it. This was the bit that was the steepest bit. So that little bit there was like a ramp coming out of the river. And it only has one contour line across that whole thing. So, yeah, there's no absolute when it comes to these numbers. So what were the real numbers? Down the bottom here at the creek bed, we were actually at 592 meters and it went up to 600 meters. So that's an 8 meter climb over 43 meters, which works out to be 5.3 to 1, which is 10 degrees or 18%. Then the second part of this, going back up the other side, this bit. So down the bottom here, we were at 609 meters and up the top went up to 776 meters. So that's a 167 meter climb over 990 meters from down the bottom here up to the top. So almost a kilometer going from down the bottom up to the top. So it's a kilometer climb. That's worth bearing in mind too. That's a kilometer of just constantly going straight up. Which is a factor. So that works out to be 5.9 to 1. So again, around 10 degrees, 17%, right? So pretty steep. The thing is, now that we've gone through all those numbers and we've kind of looked at all of that from as far as data, that helps us, work out a decision. Do we take this particular path or not? And probably in hindsight, maybe I would have found another way instead because it was pretty ridiculously steep. Having said that, if I didn't probably stuff up my clutch, I probably would have made it up the other side quite easily. But, the surface is a bigger factor than these numbers. If you're on a steep surface and it's nice and firm and easy and you've got plenty of grip, then it's not a problem. If you're on a less steep but rocky surface, then that's when it becomes interesting. And that's the bit you're never going to know, right? So when you look up these numbers and you map them out and you go, okay, we're expecting a fairly steep situation here, you're still not going to know what the surface is anyway. However, by having those general numbers, you've at least got a bit of an idea of what to expect and you can make a call as to whether you're ready to commit to that or not. Anyway, I hope that helps. If it does, like, subscribe, all that junk, you know what to do. And that we'll find out in the next video.